Welcome to the ColivingCircle podcast. I am your host and the founder of ColivingCircle, Paul Burke, and I am joined today by Cate Maiolini. Did I say that right? I
Yeah,
got it.
well done.
I did practice that beforehand, so I did have a head start. But
Fantastic.
Cate is the mayor of London at Startuphome, which is a co-living space in the UK. And we're very happy you're here, Cate. Thanks for joining us, even with all this sort of madness happening.
Thank you for having me actually on your podcast.
So let's start off by talking about Startuphome a little bit.
Sure.
One of the things I've been most interested is there's sort of a divide, or I guess a spectrum right now with co-living. One being there's more broad communities like Common or Star City, and I'm sure there's some others in the UK. And then there's some that are a little bit more niche, that are more mission specific. And Startuphome happens to be one focused on entrepreneurs, startup founders, and I guess you would say freelancers. Talk a little bit more about what Startuphome is and what you guys do.
Yeah, I guess, Startuphome is a co-living based in London, as you said. So our house right now is in Islington, which is slightly on the north side of the city for people that know London quite well. It's a beautiful area. It's a co-living that focuses on providing accommodation, community, and sanctuary to entrepreneurs, remote workers, and innovators. And that is from any race, nationality, religion, background. In this sort of way, what do? Is that we aim to create a more vibrant, open, and also accountable society. These are things that are extremely important to us. We are the first actually social enterprise in co-living in Europe, and the part which is social is extremely important to us. The focus of Startuphome for this niche market, let's say, so entrepreneur, remote workers, and innovators, it mainly comes from the fact that we are, geeks in a sort of way, and innovators and entrepreneurs ourselves. And so we understood the importance of, attack, how important it is for people living together, people that are very similar, and how that impacts what you do, how you do it, how quick you can do it, how well you can do it as well, and also your general well-being and mental well-being.
That's great. And so, I mean, one of the things that we have a blog post in which you wrote out some answers to some questions I had, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes. But one of the things that I thought was super interesting was it seems like there's a pretty wide range of people within entrepreneurship, like lawyers, accountants. Talk a little bit about, first of all, how many members you guys have and sort of what the, I guess, demographic in terms of what sort of entrepreneurs are we talking about?
Yeah, so we have, at the moment we have 12 members that live within the co-living, but our alumni range is much wider. So since Startuphome started, we had so many people passing through from about 41 nationalities and from completely different backgrounds as well. Exactly as you said. I would say the majority of entrepreneur remote workers that are either right now in Startuphome or our alumni come from a background which is quite tech, so talking about fintech, blockchain, tech design, quite, as I was saying before, a geeky sort of way background, more than, like you were saying, lawyers or anything else. But we welcome any entrepreneur. It just happens that most likely because that's the way we are, as well as, that's the sort of niche that we tend to attract. The alumni, as I would say, come from any nationality. I mean, it's one of the things I like the most, having the possibility to meet people that come from all over the world. And as I was saying, different backgrounds. You learn so much and they learn so much. it's a great exchange. And right now at the house we have, you know, blockchain expert, app developer, digital design. Who else have we got? You know, platform, web platform developers as well. We have someone who's developing an e-commerce platform. There's a lot of this going on in Startuphome, and this is why, you know, the majority of our members are also able to work remotely because we are all more in the digital.
Right. I think one of the things that's fascinating is when you get a bunch of creative people together, there's often great opportunities for collaboration. For example, maybe the blockchain expert has an idea for an app that they want built on the blockchain, and they know someone who either can build it or at least help them understand the infrastructure on building an app. And it's like their next door neighbor, basically, or I guess you would call it their roommate. How much collaboration is there among members on different projects?
So there's been quite a lot of collaboration, and that is still going on at the moment. Especially, it has been, in a sort of way, quite productive being on lockdown and locked in, actually more than lockdown, with coronavirus. Because if before we used to socialize to a certain level, now we socialize even further, and we have even more time to speak to each other and to find out even more about each other. And we kind of like have weekly hackathon, if that makes sense, where we kind of like hackathon / brainstorming, let's say, where we really sit down and we start to like think, and we all come out with different ideas. And that's when most of the collaboration really starts from. But also, when you join a co-living like Startuphome, which is also a community, you join it also because of this. So every time you're looking for something, we are the first people you are coming for. So instead of, for example, like you were saying, Luke, who's one of our members that is working on blockchain, would speak straight away to me and say, can we have like maybe a social? I want to speak to the guys. I want to understand, you know, who can help me with what. I want to brainstorm. I want to pass ideas through. And we do that pretty much immediately. You know, we are constantly in communication with each other, either via our platform, our WhatsApp group, which is related just to the members in the house, or our Facebook private page as well, and private group. So it's very quick to straight away connect with everybody. And also, don't forget that the onboarding, which is such an important part of a niche co-living. It's also when I speak most of the time to the new members, and I tell them who lives in the house, who is already part of our community, and they already start to think about collaboration already on the onboarding. So even before, you know, you come and join Startuphome, you think, well, I'm already looking for something like that. That's amazing. I was looking for an e-commerce person. I was looking for an app developer. I was looking for someone who can help me, you know, develop my website. I was looking for someone who can explain to me about blockchain. We were thinking to integrate blockchain in what we are doing at the moment. And that's how it starts.
That's amazing. And I think with 12 people, it sounds like there's already a lot of collaboration. And if you guys grow, it just multiplies the opportunity for collaboration even more.
Yeah, but also through our platform that is being developed. So I will be able to talk to you maybe in the next episode a bit more about it. There are also our Facebook private group and our newsletter. There is still a lot of collaboration between the newcomer in a sort of way and the alumni. And it's really fascinating because it kind of feels like the alumni are taking care of the new members, if that makes sense. They're always very interested. from obviously a business point of view, a developing of the business or any opportunity point of view, but also from a really community and human point of view and social of who the new members are, what do they have, how can they help them, can they help each other, how can they grow, how can we all grow together. It is extremely fascinating. I absolutely love that. And also, quite a lot of our alumni that have left and moved on, they've either, went to work for different projects with, bigger entrepreneurs or freelancers. They got together to do projects. And a lot of them are also part of, like VC, angel syndicate. And so they're always super interested in find out, who is the new kid on the block in a sort of way.
Yeah. Would it be fair to say that Startuphome is like the Y Combinator of co-living?
Wow. Yeah, why not? Let's say that.
Okay. that makes for a good headline, and I'll be the one to say it, not you. So, so let's talk about sort of the community a little bit more. I think as, a founder myself, and I think in Silicon Valley and just in tech circles, one of the things that's been talked about quite a bit is loneliness, because often you're working in a bubble and no one really knows what's going on inside that bubble, because as the founder, it is you solely in that bubble, and maybe you have co-founders or advisors or something like that, but there's not a lot of people who understand exactly what you're going through. In our interview, you talked about how there's not a lot of loneliness, and co-living in some way solves that. Talk about that a little bit more, because I think that's one of the most interesting things about co-living is that, yes, you're renting a space to live, but you're also basically defeating one of the biggest things that a lot of people are going through, that technology has only increased, even though we thought it would decrease it.
Yes. So with co-living, as I said also previously, many people come, to join a co-living. Many people join a co-living, for a place to stay, but then they stay for the community, right? And the community is such an important factor, but on a co-living, it's even a more precious and a more important factor, because you tend to have people that are extremely similar to you. So you don't just, kill in a sort of way the loneliness. So you don't just overcome that, but so you don't feel alone because you have people living around you or in the same building. You also feel less lonely because you have people, exactly as you said, that actually understand you. To quote an example, if I get home, if I get back to the co-living at 1 o'clock in the morning and one of the members is there on the computer working, my first question wouldn't be like, why are you still working at 1 a.m.? Like, seriously? It's more like, hey, mate. In England, we say mate. So, hey, mate, what are you working on? Are you working, oh, it's 1 a.m. Are you working with the United States? Are you online with, that side of the world, or Australia, for example? We have our guys that work with Australia. What are you working on? Is there anything I can do? Can I help you with anything? Anything that could be from making you a cup of warm, drink, or anything really that can really support you, because I think this is what we need. It's not loneliness, and being alone. It's not just about having people around you, like physically, but it's actually finding someone that really understands you so that you don't have to be in that bubble. Exactly what you said. And I think co-living is really nailing that, especially co-living, which are more, like we would say, niche. So, you also feel free to really speak to people because they know they understand you. They either are going through this or they have already gone through that, which is also what I speak about in the interview that you will, the link you will put in the description. I also say that is so important. You go there because, you know, the people that you will find in co-living, either they've already gone through that, or they are going through it, or they will help you go through it, or you actually will help them going through it. And you also will understand that there's so many people that are going through the same thing, that they are achieving your same thing, or they are suffering the same thing. And that's really where, for me, communities are made.
Yeah.
Communities are made.
Do you think, Cate, that broad spaces that are not as niche, that are not focused on any specific passion or mission, can also help overcome sort of some of that loneliness? Or what do you think the difference is there, you know, as far as a broad versus a more niche co-living space?
Sure, absolutely. I think it also, again, I think the onboarding is very important. You decide where you want to go to live, right? In a sort of way, like you decide where you want to go on holiday. There's so many different places and so many different types of accommodation and so many different types. So you go and you look for what really will make you feel less lonely and less isolated and less not understood and less alone. You will look for it. So if you are someone that wants to have a really tight community and is really focusing on that niche, which for me, it's very much, you know, like, you know, tech entrepreneurs, you know, we really are like that. We really like that. Like we can talk about, you know, programming and the new things and blockchain and building stuff until 7 o'clock in the morning and further, you know, 24/7. That's the whole point of the hackathon, right? Other people might be happy to want to be in a community, in a community that is very similar to them, but not necessarily exactly the same as them.
Right.
So I think both providers of co-living can achieve exactly that, can battle, can fight, you know, can overcome this problem of loneliness and being alone. It just really depends. There's not everybody that wants to go and live in a co-living really wants to be part of a community 24/7. This is why the majority of co-living are set up, as I was explaining also on my interview, on, you know, having your own space. So you have your own room, or even your own little flat, or even your own, you know, bed sit, where you have your own space and you can stay there. And, you know, in our house, for example, in our co-living, the majority of the room also have a desk inside. So if there is a day where you really need to just concentrate and you need to be there and you just need to focus, you need to zone out, it's there. But the beauty is that in the moment you open that door of your room, you have the community there. You don't have to step out to make an effort to try to understand where people which are so similar to you and they would really understand you. Where are them? Where are them in this moment? Where can I find them? How do I get out and get them? They're there for you. Right. So when I struggle, if I am developing something and I am struggle with one of my website design, for example, or an app or something that in that moment I don't get it, I just open my door or I just send a message on the WhatsApp group and say, hey, is there anyone that can help me for this? Guys, I'm really stuck. They say, okay, living room in 5 minutes. Okay, so we just go up, cup of coffee or whatever, and we just kind of like, brainstorm through the problem and done, it's solved. It's just priceless.
Yeah, it really is. And I mean, even with one of my roommates, I don't live in co-living, but one of my roommates is his major in college was acting, but his minor was arts entrepreneurship. And we're already working on a project. And so there is just that natural thing when you're around people to complement one another. Let's talk about you a little bit, if that's okay.
Sure.
In our interview, you said, I asked you how you got to become the mayor of London at Startuphome. And you said the chain of events that brought me here is much weirder. And I'm here for the weirdness. I want to hear how you got into this spot, because you're very passionate about entrepreneurship, and now you get to sort of oversee this community of entrepreneurs flourish and collaborate. talk about your background and the weird story you have for us. We're definitely interested in that.
Yeah, so I mean, the story that really got me passionate about co-living, not just entrepreneurship, is actually started a few years ago when I was traveling the world for fashion. So I used to be a fashion producer. I still nip in and out sometimes. When I really miss it, I go back and I do my fashion weeks here and there. So I was a fashion producer, and I used to travel to, I used to travel pretty much every week somewhere. But also during the main, fashion week, so Milan, Paris, New York, and London, we as a team used to travel all together. So we would all move and go from London, where a lot of us would live, to Milan, then to Paris, then to New York, actually New York first. And when I started to, on my first couple of seasons, not really, but then I really started to really understand the need of co-living. And I'm talking about like a good few years ago, 2012 maybe. So we're talking about, a good 8 years ago. So all of us were, I used to look after, and I still do actually, hair and makeup. So I used to look after, the beauty side of the background, of the backstage, sorry, during fashion week, during big fashion shows. And so I used to notice that how, us as, let's say, hair and makeup, used to crave to want to live together when we went into the city. So we wanted to go to Paris and kind of like rent a big place for all of us to live together. And it wasn't just about saving money. That's what I really understood. It wasn't just about, an affordable accommodation. That also was an element. But the biggest element was exactly what you said before. So it was exactly the fact that we didn't want to be in that bubble on our own. We just wanted to share it with people that really understood us, really understood what it meant waking up really early, carrying your kit with you, the stress of the fashion week, all of it. And so that's when I really started to think, okay, hold on a second. I'm really liking this, and I'm really understanding that there is a demand, and I really understand that this is a problem that as an entrepreneur that I am, I really want to solve. And that's how I started to get into co-living. First, I was the one, investing. First, I was just as an investor, and I started to also, organize, people to travel. And when they were traveling, I would say, okay, I'll find a place, I'll look after you. I will do the good onboarding and all of that sort of thing. And then I decided to look less into fashion and more into co-living and real estate in general, really. And so, I decided to push myself into that. And, I was running a portfolio of smaller co-living, so also defined as HMO, so house of multiple occupancies. And after a while, I started to look into, bigger co-living, more niche. I had this entrepreneurial, factor in me, and I wanted to be around more people that were also more technical and not as artistic as. And I came across Startuphome. I came across Startuphome. I really loved it. I decided to go and live in Startuphome. And the person who was looking after, the community and the whole of thing left at the time. He's one of our alumni that actually went on to become, one of the VC and overlooking a lot of investments and finding, new opportunities, which is fantastic. And he's still very active in our community. And, I temporarily took on the role. And then I absolutely loved it and, loved the community as crazy and wanted to develop it even more. And that's how I became the house mayor.
Wow.
From fashion and catwalk to entrepreneurs.
That's not quite a linear trajectory. It's like all over the place, but that's the life.
That's why I said it. That's why I said it's much. Yes, that's why I said to you it's much weirder because, sometimes when you speak to certain entrepreneurs, especially if they are more technical, let's say, they come out from maybe like developer background, and so it's kind of like a step by step that makes sense. But for me, it's more like a roller coaster in a certain way. It's like, so I was into fashion, and then I went into living together with people, and then more into real estate, and then I guess it's just, I mean, the true meaning of an entrepreneur is someone really that wants to solve a problem for, that sees a problem, wants to find a solution and develop a business or anything that works around that solution. And
Yeah.
so, when I wanted to, create more co-living and understand that putting these sorts of people together, I understood that more and more people thought exactly like me. And that's what I thought, okay, I just have to do it. I just have to do it. And, I also think, no, I don't think, I absolutely know that the reason why I loved Startuphome, it's because of the social enterprise, the fact that they are so, we are so interested for us, the well-being of our members and the developing of our members is so important. So being able to really help them and to serve them in a certain way so that they can really achieve more and more, and they can do their work better, and they can build their companies better, and they can just be better in everything. It's an extremely important part.
And it's so much more than a room. It's like you're living there, but the other half is you get aside from you get a bed to sleep in and all that sort of stuff,
Yeah.
the community and social stuff is just like, it's beyond what you can get from renting a traditional
Yes.
space.
Absolutely, but also, think about you're moving to a new city, which is what I experienced, where we used to travel to New York and Milan and Paris. Of course, after a few years, you kind of like get used to because you start to know it. But it took us a few years. So imagine you're moving to a new city or a new side of the city, even. Like for example, you live in Los Angeles, right?
Yep.
Los Angeles is quite big as well. From one side to the other of town is probably quite different. And London is the same, from west to east, it's completely different. It is London, but it's very different. From north to south, same thing. In fact,
Yep.
there's a lot of, like rivals, where, kind of like rivals. You're from south, you're from north, that sort of thing. But imagine you're actually moving to a new city. It will take you such a long time to understand, how the city where everything is, what's best, what's not good, where you should go. Sometimes it's good to go out and explore for sure, but exploring every single thing is quite daunting, especially when you just move. And especially if you're an entrepreneur that needs to move somewhere to really concentrate on what you want to do and how you want to achieve it, especially you want to achieve it as soon as possible. Because we know that entrepreneurs, we're not very good with being very patient, right? We want everything yesterday, not today, but yesterday. So when you join a co-living, it's just great because you arrive and you have not just a community, like you were saying, but a community of people that will straight away tell you, oh yeah, this is the best place you can go. This is where they have the best coffee, for example. Yeah, you can come with me to my gym. I go there. That's how we would go out running. Oh, there is a running group. You can join us. Anything from your grocery store to literally anything. What's the best way to travel to work, for example, if you're going to work somewhere, if you want to join a co-working space, for example, which one is the best co-working space, anything. The community is there. They are already living there. They already know these sorts of things. And they can also tell you, you can read blogs, you can read, all the website that they tell you reviews about places, about people, about anything. But it's so different when you actually sit down and you talk to someone and you say,
Right.
this is exactly what I'm looking for. And they say, yeah, I can tell you exactly. That place is like this. Avoid that one. Go there. This is how you need to do it. And to me, it's priceless.
Yeah, and especially for a city like Los Angeles. I moved here from Seattle, Washington a couple of years back, and
Okay.
Los Angeles is definitely one city, but it's basically like 10 or 12 cities within one city. And so
Exactly.
even if you explore one part of town, the next part can be completely different. And I know for me, it took me a couple of years to really understand like the geography and the layout and where you go out to eat and where you go out to bars and where's like way too expensive and where's like, like pretty underpriced and like good value and like normal people. So I think that's a huge benefit. And also if you come to a city like Los Angeles, it's hard to make friends. And if you do, let's say you meet someone and you like, I live in Hollywood and I meet a friend who lives in like Santa Monica. That's 30, 45 minutes, hour and a half sometimes away from each other. And it's like a long distance relationship basically, because you really have to plan out when you're going to get together. So even just being able to make friends right away
Yeah.
is such a huge part, especially when you're moving somewhere new. And it, like you said, it does take not just months, it can take years to
Yeah,
understand a
absolutely.
city like Los Angeles and probably London. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's definitely a benefit. Let's get
But
to
even if it's a small reality, like I went to visit a few different co-living that are set up also like in the middle of literally nowhere,
mhm,
and they have like working and co-living everything. It's so important to you arrive and you have people in there that have already lived there for a while, so they can tell you exactly where you want to go and rent your bike, where you want to go and do the grocery shopping, where you want anything really. It
right.
anything. It's and not just that. Also, if when you go through certain things, as soon as someone new comes into your community, it's like a natural instinct. You do want them, you want them to avoid doing in a sort of way your same mistakes or
Right.
going through your pain. So you straight away try to, warn them on what not to do or what to do.
Yeah,
And I
that
think that's it. It's also where the community develops even more.
yeah, that need to help. And speaking of help, let's go to the modern news. Um, Co-living has taken sort of from the people I've talked to quite a bit of hit, quite a hit in the short term, and we talk about this a little bit on our blog post. But
Mhm.
tell us first of all how the coronavirus and the quarantine and self-isolation and social distancing is affecting Startuphome.
So we're extremely lucky at Startuphome, or perhaps we've done a fantastic, setup, and this is why we are in this situation. So only one of our residents has decided to go in self-isolation. He wanted to be completely on his own, and so he decided to leave. But all the other members are staying at home. They decided to remain there. And actually it's been brilliant, all so we've implemented all the measurements, with regard to health and safety and government guidelines before it was, let's say, compulsory. It was made compulsory by the UK government, especially because I am Italian and I've seen that happening in Italy. So I started to, warn our members and say, guys, this is going to happen. It's natural, it will expand and it will come here as well. So, we started to go into a semi-lockdown, even before the lockdown, the official lockdown from the government was, instructed and everybody had to do it. We started to talk to each other straight away. We started to say, as a general rule, no more guests in the house unless it's strictly necessary, as in, we let the cleaner come in for a couple of weeks. There was a little repair that needed to be done, so the handyman came in. But after that, that is it. We stopped, we set up our rota, we took our responsibility. And I think the first 2 or 3 days were a bit worrying in a sort of way and a little bit, I don't want to say scary. I don't want to use the word scary, but people were a bit wary of the fact that they had to live together for such a long time.
Mm-hmm.
What was it going to be? How were we going to cope? And then this sort of beauty of the community came in, you know, of we all sat down and we all said, okay, we are in this together. You know, we decided to live together. We are going to stay here. What are we going to do about it? And apart from some of the rules that obviously as a, you know, provider, we had to implement and to put, you know, in there, everything else was literally, again, the community. And this is what for us, it's, you know, the social enterprise part is so important. You know, the community spirit, it really is so important. So we all decided to, you know, put all our effort together. And actually, and very interestingly, you know, even more collaborations are coming up now because, as I was saying before, we have even more time to speak to each other. If before, you know, bear in mind that we live in London and it's like a fantastic city that never stops. And there is, you know, every day there is something happening. Every day, every hour, every moment, every morning, every afternoon. So although you live in a community and you spend a lot of time with your community, you obviously live in a city and you go out, you socialize with other people, you attend other events, you do other things. But obviously by being in lockdown, it means that your community becomes even more your social base. And so, you know, if before we had, you know, one social every week, now it's like, I don't want to say once a day, but kind of, you know, it becomes even more. And obviously not everybody's free at the same time. So, you know, even if you didn't have the chance maybe to speak to someone as much before, you now have it even further. And so we are discovering even more interesting stuff about each other, even more interesting stuff about our business, because we all have more times in our hands and we actually really understood even further how precious it is to have a community in this moment. I can't think how difficult and, you know, how really hard has to be for someone who is on their own right now. And they didn't choose to be on their own. Do you understand? So like,
Right.
if you decided that, you know, perhaps you are at risk and you're one of those subjects that, you know, can really be, you know, be hit very hard should you be catching, you know, the virus, then I understand, you know, you're doing it for yourself. You want to go in total, you know, strict self-isolation. And it's extremely important that you do so. But, you know, for someone that normally just live on their own, actually being forced to stay indoor and to just be there on your own all the time for we don't know how long, it must be very tough on your mental health as well. And also, I don't know if you've seen some of the photos that we have as well. We have a fantastic rooftop, it's huge, and we spend a lot of time there. So the Wi-Fi gets to the rooftop, so, you know, we have an outdoor office, and, you know, that's also the place where we do a lot of our physical activities. I'm a big Zumba fan. So, you know, I think it's really good for mental health because it's, you know, it makes you really smile and it makes you move. And it's like, again, it's another community thing. And I think that's really the difference. And also bear in mind that because our co-living is not huge, is on a medium size, everybody really already from before knew each other and interacted to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So if anything, I have to say it got even better.
Yeah, and I can see that from, you know, things that started that basically relate. The one positive I can see from this is relationships really deepen during this
Yeah,
time
yeah,
because you have too much time to where you can't just, you know, talk about, oh, the weather, this or that. You have so much time. Your only option is to really get to know people.
yeah,
And so,
absolutely.
and
But
like you said,
also, I think, sorry, I interrupted you.
no problem.
I also think that, you know, coronavirus in a sort of way has shown everybody that we are all the same, that we really are all the same.
Yeah.
It's like no one, it's, you know, I can't just look at you and say, Paul, I mean, you know, you are from Los Angeles, so you are going to be just fine. It's like, no, it doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter anything. We really are all in this together. And so I guess that's what really strengthened the community more. And also, don't forget, as we were mentioning before, our members are mainly entrepreneur, remote worker, and innovators. And even, we have a few members that used to go out every day and they joined one of the co-working spaces that, at Startuphome we collaborate with. Um, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Once they have their computer, maybe their larger screen, especially, the guys working on developing and stuff like that, they need bigger screen.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it from anywhere. So it's, yes, it has affected us, but we are also really lucky because, our members are also people that can carry on, doing what they do day in, day out. Okay, it affected the fact that they can't go out of the house, but it's still, waking up, doing their work, talking to the other people they're working with constantly. So I think it's very important as well that that hasn't changed, and that really has made a bigger impact on, Startuphome in general.
Yeah. Okay, let's get to my last question,
Yeah.
which is, how do you think? So we're seeing the effects of COVID-19 on a short-term basis. We're seeing cancellations at a lot of places, just reduced bookings. What do you think the long-term impacts of COVID-19 will be on co-living, in terms of how spaces are designed, how communities interact? What do you think that looks like?
So I definitely think that a lot of people understood right now the strength and the value even further of a community, of how important having people around you and really having someone that can support you in this sort of moment, especially if you live with people that are very similar to you and you can constantly, I don't want to say this situation made it even better, but you definitely know how to take advantage of something that you cannot control. So there is something which is outside and around us that we are struggling, worldwide to control. But what we can control is what's happening within, inside. So inside our house, inside the place we live, inside our co-living. And that is, I think, something that will be extremely precious moving on in the future. For sure, the way we will need to build and develop buildings will change. Will change because we will need to be able to create spaces that will be able to accommodate people that will want to, auto-isolate or self-isolate should they need to, without the necessity of having to share facilities with others. So as we were mentioning during our, interview, I believe, um, for example, just an example that springs in mind is designing rooms that also have a tiny, maybe like a smaller kitchenette, so it becomes more like a bed sit, so that should something like that happen again, people can choose to really stay in their own room 24/7, and also if they need to, because they might fall ill or there might be a necessity, and they really don't need to step out of there for anything else. They can ask other members to go shopping for them and to bring food and to bring that sort of thing, leave it outside the room, and then their space, in within the room in a sort of way is kind of like self-contained. But I actually think that, as you said, COVID might have impacted on a short term some of the co-living, spaces, especially the one that perhaps right now are offering, short-term stay, because obviously people are not moving, that they are not traveling. So, uh, you know, uh, they suffer the same way that hotels are suffering, and Airbnb providers and service accommodation providers are. But I actually think that on the long run, uh, COVID would really get people to see the importance of living with people that are so similar to you and that you can really rely on.
Yeah, that's that I think all of that is a great point. I think it'll have probably big changes, and people will probably be reserved unless co-living spaces are being extremely proactive about maintaining health and cleanliness and safety and well-being for its members. So that's great insight, Cate. Is there anything else you want to share to people who are perhaps checking out Startuphome? This is the closing segment in which you talk about whatever you want to talk about that I didn't ask you about.
Yeah, so Startuphome is, as I mentioned before, obviously it's a social enterprise, and our aim is really is the well-being. We like to think we are a sanctuary for entrepreneurs, innovators, and remote workers, and it's so important to us. And obviously, we would like to bring this spirit in a sort of way all around the world, and this is my aim. And I would like to see a startup home in every city. I would love that, and I can't wait to develop even further our platform that will connect our alumni wherever they are, even further in the world, and it will let other people to connect with us. That's the main, I think that's what I really want to concentrate, and that's really where Startuphome is going. And also, as I mentioned in the interview, it's not just about a room, like you were saying, but it's more a 360-degree service for entrepreneurs and innovators, and being ourselves, so the people will really understand the needs that we have as an entrepreneur. So anything that could be from the mailing, redirection to your account, your bookkeeping, and being done to any single thing. We want to be able to really support entrepreneurs and innovators with every single thing that is really necessary for them to be able to, strive even further and to achieve even further. But I definitely want to see a Startuphome, in every single city, in the world.
We're in Los Angeles.
And I really mean it, every single city in the world.
Come to Los Angeles. We're waiting for you guys. We're waiting.
We have to wait until this coronavirus is gone, but I definitely will. I was planning to come to California for the Coliving conference, and I wanted to, to pop down to Los Angeles as well. But obviously, it's going to be an online one now, so that's not going to happen. But I'm definitely going to go. Los Angeles, I think, Los Angeles and California in general is definitely a place that is ready for Startuphome. I think the niche is there, it's full of entrepreneurs, innovators, remote workers. And, I can see myself set up a nice Startuphome in there also. But yeah, I mean, please feel free to reach out to me. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, or, you can find us on our website. And if you have any questions, if you want to work with us, if you think, Startuphome is suitable for, for whatever you are doing at the moment, just, get in touch.
And we'll provide.
Let me explain a bit more about what we do.
Thank you, Cate. And we'll provide show notes down below to where you can reach out to Cate on LinkedIn, and definitely access to their website, so you can get even a more full picture of what it looks like and how it's done.
And
anyway,
I really just want to say, to end it all, that I think, you're obviously on the Coliving, world as well. For me, it's such an exciting time. Like, I really believe that we are shaping the future of our society and how people will live. In 20 years' time, we'll probably look back and say, wow, we were part of that movement that started, the Coliving again. Because, back in the day, that's how people used to live, mainly because of economical reasons, right? People used to live together, families used to live together, and now we are doing it for a different reason. We want to go back to find our community, our path. together we are stronger. Together we are stronger, and I believe that as co-living provider, this is exactly what we are doing at the moment. We're really shaping the future of how our society is and how we will live, and this will impact anything across any, sectors, across any age range, and across any country.
Yeah, and last note before we wrap up, but sort of to piggyback on your point, 10 years
Of
ago,
course,
the idea of Uber and Airbnb sounded crazy.
absolutely.
And even, my mom for like 8 years was scared of Uber, and it's scary. Same with Airbnb and co-living. I feel like maybe a couple years ago was sort of felt like that in some ways to a different generation. And like you said, in even 3 to 5 to 10 years, we'll see co-living get mass acceptance, not only among, sort of individuals, but maybe even families, and sort of it'll go
Yeah,
back to
absolutely.
co-housing sort of arrangements. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us, Cate. Hope you
You're
guys
very
enjoyed
welcome.
this. We had a lot of fun doing it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much for having me. See you in Los Angeles.
See ya.